Section 17, Volume 2 of the Book of 1000 Nights and a Night, translated by Richard Burton. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Filippo Joachim. The Book of 1000 Nights and a Night, Volume 2, Section 17. When it was the 51st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that Sharrkan bade Princess Abrizah and her damsels doff the garb that was on them, and don the garments of daughters of Greece. And thus did they. Then he dispatched a company of his companions to Baghdad to acquaint his father Omar bin al-Nu'man with his arrival, and report that he was accompanied by Princess Abrizah, daughter of King Hardub, lord of Grisha-land. They halted forthright in the place they had reached, and Sharrkan also halted, and all righted there. And when Almighty Allah made morning dawn, Sharrkan and his company, and Abrizah and her company, took horse, and fared on towards the city. When lo, on the way they met the Wazir Dandan, who had come out amongst 1,000 horse to honor Abrizah and Sharrkan, by a special commandment of King Omar, son of al-Nu'man. When the two drew near, they turned towards them and kissed ground before them. Then they mounted again and escorted them into the city, and went up with them to the palace. Sharrkan walked in to his father, who rose and embraced him and questioned him of his case. So he told him all that Abrizah had told him, and what had passed between them, and said, She hath parted from her sire, and departed from her reign, and hath chosen to take part with us, and make her abode with us. And indeed, he said to his father, the king of Constantinople hath plotted to do us a mischief, because of his daughter Sophia, for that the king of Greece had made known to him her story, and the cause of her being given to thee. And he, the Grecian king, not knowing her to be daughter of King Afridun, lord of Constantinople, and had he known that, he would not have bestowed her upon thee, but he would have restored her to her parent. And of a verity, he continued, we were saved from these perils only by the Lady Abrizah, and never saw we a more valiant than she. And he went on to tell his father all that had passed from first to last, of the wrestling and the single fighting. When King Omar heard the story of Sharrkan, Abrizah was exalted in his eyes, and he longed to see her and question her. Thereupon Sharrkan went out to her and said, The king calleth for thee. She replied, I hear and I obey. And he took her and brought her in to his father, who was seated on his throne, and who, having dismissed his high officers, was attended only by his eunuchs. The princess entered, and kissing the ground between his hands, saluted him in choice terms. He was amazed at her eloquent speech, and thanked her for her dealing with his son Sharrkan, and bade her be seated. So she sat down and unveiled her face. And when the king saw her beauty, his reason fled his head, and he made her draw near and showed her favour, appointing her an especial palace for herself and her damsels, and assigning them solde and allowances. Then began he to ask her of the 3 jewels aforesaid, and she answered, Here be they with me, O king of the age. So saying, she rose, and going to her lodging, unpacked her baggage, and from it brought out a box, and from the box a casket of gold. She opened the casket, and taking out those 3 jewels, kissed them and gave them to the king. Then she went away, bearing his heart with her. After her going, the king sent for his son Sharrkan, and gave him 1 jewel of the 3, and when he enquired of the other 2, replied, O my son, I mean to give one to thy brother, Zau al-Makan, and the other to thy sister, Nuzhat al-Zaman." But when Sharrkan heard that he had a brother, for to that time he knew only of his sister, he turned to his sire and said to him, "O king, hast thou a son other than myself?" He answered, "Yes, and he is now 6 years old," adding that his name was Zau al-Makan, and that he and Nuzhat al-Zaman were twins, born at a birth. This news was grievous to Sharrkan, but he kept his secret, and said, "The blessing of Allah Most High be upon them." And he cast the jewel from his hand, and shook the dust off his clothes. Quoth the king, "How do I see thee change thy manner when hearing of this, considering that after me thou becomest heir of the kingdom? Of a truth, the troops have sworn to thee, and the emirs and grandees have taken the oath of succession to thee, and this one of the 3 jewels is thine." Sharrkan bowed his head to the ground, and was ashamed to bandy words with his parent, so he accepted the jewel and went away, knowing not what to do for exceeding wrath, and stayed not, walking till he had entered Abriza's palace. As he approached, she stood up to meet him and thanked him for what he had done, and prayed for blessings on him and his sire. Then she sat down and seated him by her side. But when he had taken his place, she saw rage in his face and questioned him, whereupon he told her that Allah had blessed his father with 2 children by Sophia, a boy and a girl, and that he had named the boy Zau al-Makan and the girl Nuzhat al-Zaman, adding, "He hath kept the other 2 jewels for them, and hath given me one of thine, so I left it behind. I knew not of Zau al-Makan's birth till this day, and the twain are now 6 years old. So when I learned this, wrath possessed me, and I tell thee the reason of my rage, and hide nothing from thee. But now I fear lest my father take thee to wife, for he loveth thee, and I saw in him signs of desire for thee. So what wilt thou say if he wish this?" Quoth she, "Know, O Sharrkan, that thy father hath no dominion over me, nor can he have me without my consent, and if he prevail over me by force, I will take my own life. As for the 3 jewels, it was not my intent that he should give any of them to either of his children, and I had no thought but that he would lay them up in his treasury with his things of price. But now I desire of thy favour that thou make me a present of the jewel which he gave thee, if thou have accepted it." "Hearkening and obedience," replied Sharrkan, and gave it to her. Then said she, "Fear nothing," and talked with him a while, and continued, "I fear lest my father hear that I am with you, and sit not patiently under my loss, but do his endeavour to find me, and to that end he may ally himself with King Afridun on account of his daughter Sophia, and both come on thee with armies, and so there befall great turmoil." When Sharrkan heard these words, he said to her, "O my lady, if it please thee to sojourn with us, take no thought of them, though there gather together against us all that be on land and on sea." "'Tis well," rejoined she, "and if ye entreat me fair, I will tarry with you, and if ye deal evilly by me, I will depart from you." Then she bade her slave maidens bring food, so they set the tables, and Sharrkan ate a little and went away to his own house, disturbed and perturbed. Such was his case. But regarding the affairs of his father, Omar bin al-Nu'man, after dismissing his son Sharrkan, he rose, and taking the other 2 jewels, betook himself to the Lady Sophia, who stood up when she saw him, and remained